Hi again. Today I thought we'd look at infinity scarves. Now they're a very quick and easy make and they make great presents. I wear them quite a lot. I think they look quite nice. And they're also pretty good, particularly if you use a jersey or a stretch one. You can use it as a face mask as well. You can use other materials. You can use fur, you can use wovens, but you will probably need to use a slightly longer length of material if you're using a woven or a fur. Anything which is particularly bulky, like a fur fabric or a faux fur fabric or something like that, you'll need to take a longer piece of material as well, because what will happen is the bulk will bulk up around your neck and it won't work quite so well. So when you're making an infinity scarf, what you need is you need approximately 1.5 meters of material. And then what I do is I just half the width of the material. Some people say you should have 60 centimeters. Some people say you should have 40 centimeters. I find just halving the width of the material works really, really well. And then of course you can make 2 infinity scarves out of the 1.5 meters. What I'm going to use today is this fabric here, which I got in a bundle, and I think it's quite a nice one, which would work really well for a man. So I'm going to cut this and then I'm going to show you how we make our infinity scarf. So here's my cut piece of material. It's 1.5 meters long, and then it's half the width of the fabric. So the first thing we need to do is we need to fold it right sides together, pin, and then hem along the long edge. I'm going to be using my Overlocker for this because I'm using a stretch material. You can use a standard machine if you use a zigzag stitch or a triple zigzag stitch or anything which is good for a stretch material. Of course, if you are using a woven material to make your infinity scarf, then you can just use a standard stitch on your ordinary machine. Before moving over to the Overlocker, I did do one more step. So what I've done is I've actually basted with a very long stitch length, well, the longest stitch length on my machine, which is 4. I've basted the edges together. This means that I have got no pins in my piece of material, and when you're stitching jersey, particularly on an Overlocker, it's very important that you haven't got any pins, because you've got a cutting blade, which is just around here, and if you get a pin in the cutting blade, you can blunt it, and then it's a nightmare to try and get that replaced. So if you baste all of your seams before you actually stitch them through the Overlocker, you'll actually not have to worry about cutting pins, and you'll get a much nicer finish, and you also won't get the edges rolling over so much because you've already basted it really close to the edge. So next step is literally just to fire away with the Overlocker and close this seam. So we start like this, and as you can see, we've got a piece of material being cut off here, being trimmed. I'm not going to film stitching the whole of this seam, so I'll come back once that's stitched and show you the next step. So here we are with my overlocked edge, and the joy of this is because you've got cutting that extra bit off, the basting stitch which I put in, which was basically just a straight stitch, a non-stretch stitch, has been cut off. Yeah, you can see it there, just been cut off in the excess bit of material. So I've now got a nice long tube of material which is sealed along that edge. The next step is tricky. It's tricky to describe because what you've got to do is take one end of this material and feed it through the middle and come out the other end. It's probably easier to show you than it is to describe. When I saw it on various sites describing how to make infinity scarves, it took me a while to work out how to do it. So I'm just going to zoom back out. So what you do is you've got your long tube of material, and basically what you have to do is you have to put your hand in one end, feed through right to the other end, like so, and grab this raw edge. Don't worry about the tail of stitching. You're going to stitch over this, so that will be trapped in anyway, and then you can just trim the edge off. So what we do now is we pull that through our tube until it's at this end. And then what we're going to do is stitch all around this edge. Well, not quite all around this edge. We're going to leave a gap to turn it. So now I've pulled it and I've got a slightly shorter tube, but it's fed the material through the middle. So the next step I've got to do is to match this up, baste it, and then overlock it all the way around. And I'm going to try and match up the lines because I've got vertical lines here. So I'm going to try and match up the lines when I baste it so that when I overlock it, it will look like one continuous piece of material. So here we are with my finished piece, if you like. So I've got what looks like a very short tube, which looks like it's completely wrong because I've got all the wrong sides on the outside. What I'm going to do first is I will take these basting stitches here out. I don't know if you can just see them there. First and foremost, I'm going to finish off these raw edges here because these are not going to be sewn or overlocked. So what I have here is what they call a loop turner, and you feed that through your stitching. Oops, if you can get it right. So you feed this through the stitching of your overlocker, like so. It is a little bit fiddly till you get to the edge. Just going to zoom in a little bit. There we go. So you can see that my loop turner is now through the stitches. I then catch in this looped end bit the end of that tail, and as I pull it closed, this latch will close. So I pull it through, it will pull that raw tail through, and then I can just leave it, and so it's nice and neat. I'm going to do that on the other end, and then I'll remove the basting stitches, and then I'll show you how you turn this the right way out. I haven't left a particularly long gap here. That's because this is jersey and it's going to stretch. If you were turning a woven or a faux fur or any other type of material that is non-stretch, you would leave a bigger gap so that you've got more space to turn it. So there we are. All I've got to do now is turn everything through this little gap. I know it looks like it's wrong, but this is the sort of magic bit. You just turn everything right side through this gap. I know it doesn't look like it will work, but it seriously does. And this sort of feels like a bit like magic because you've gone from a flat square piece of fabric, and then once you've turned this all the way through, like so, there we go, you then have a tube of fabric. I've lined up quite well there. I see my stitches have come through a little bit, but it's not a problem because it's not going to be too stretched. Next thing I need to do is I've got one small gap here, and I've just got to hand stitch that closed. That's one of the reasons I left a smaller gap, because you do have to hand stitch this closed. And then I've got a finished infinity scarf. So there you have it. One quick and easy infinity scarf. As you can see, with 1.5 meters, this is actually quite tight at the moment. It will give because it's jersey, so as you wear it and wash it, it will start to stretch. That's one of the reasons I said that if you're using a woven or a thicker material or a non-stretch material, you need to go for slightly longer than 1.5 meters. Otherwise it could get quite tight around the neck. But I hope you've enjoyed this video. As ever, if you've enjoyed it, please subscribe along the bottom. And if there's anything that you'd like me to do, or you'd like to see me do, please drop me a line. The link for my email is in the video, or underneath the video, or somewhere connected on YouTube. I'm not quite sure. As ever, I'm going to try and do one of these a month. I hope you've enjoyed this one again. So bye for now.